Today's video is all about problem selection. But before going there, let me tell you a story. In 2009, a very famous UX designer named Jared Spool was hired by an enormous retailer or an e-commerce company to solve with the problem that they were facing. Now, what was the problem? They were seeing almost about 30% of their users are actually adding things to cart, but when it's time for them to check out, they were dropping off without buying anything. Now, before going forward, I would like to remind or highlight one particular thing is that the company that I'm talking about was already huge at that point in time. They had enough data, they had smart minds working for them, but even then, they were doing one thing wrong, was that they were not sitting with the users to actually understand the pain point and friction. That's where the external hire, Jared and his team, did wonders. They actually sat with the users just to understand what was happening wrong, and instantly one thing became clear to them is that whenever there are new users coming to the checkout page, they are seeing only two options. One is login, another one is register. Now, it's not like they were not understanding what these two CTAs meant, but they were clearly getting annoyed. Just to understand this situation a little better, they actually dug through the data to find out that almost 45% of the user base had multiple login credentials or multiple accounts per se. They were receiving 160k password reset requests every single day. This is where Jared and his team just added a simple thing, a simple button called continue as guest, and that did wonders. In the first month itself, the company saw $15 million of revenue over that, and that expanded into $300 million over the next year. And this is exactly where it gave birth to the very famous case study called $300 million button. Now again, just to remind you, the company that I'm talking about already was worth billions at that point in time. So 13% loss at that scale meant losing hundreds of millions of dollars every year, and that is why even after having great teams, they brought in Jared. The company's team were actually looking at wrong areas. They were putting in the efforts but in wrong problems, and that is what exactly the target of this video is. What is problem selection? How do we go forward with it, and how do we find out even if a problem is worth solving or not? So let's jump in. Hey guys, this is Ankita and welcome to Data Couple. Today's video, as you already know, is about problem selection. But hold on. Today, it's not only about theoretical knowledge, frameworks, data or tools, but rather than that, I have one specific exercise planned for you at the end of this video. This exercise will help you understand that if you have actually grasped the concept of problem selection altogether or not. So stick till the end. Now, coming to the point of what happens when you select a wrong problem to solve. Now, the first thing that happens is that you are using all your testing capacity on the wrong thing. You are using up your engineering time, your design time, and the most important thing, your users. So your valuable users who are already limited, you're using them on a low impact test, which you could have tried out on something which mattered to you, right? Because specifically, if you are working in a business where users are not that frequent because it's a high ticket purchase, then you're definitely losing your valuable users. So always prioritize and spend more time on problem selection rather than just jumping onto solving a problem. Now the second thing that happens is that whenever we are optimizing something which is already broken rather than fixing it, we are always going for lower impact rather than higher impacts, right? So whenever we are optimizing for lower impacts, then more often than not, 6 months down the line, we will see that majority of our primary metrics have been static all over, which means all our efforts and time had been in vain. Now, the third thing, which is the most important thing in this scenario, is that whenever we are continuously going after wrong tests, then the team itself loses its faith on A/B testing altogether. They feel like whole testing or experimentation design is pointless or a futile exercise for them. Now that is something that we definitely don't want to have. Now, how do you find out what's a problem worth solving? Now, as a PM or a data scientist, you have to actually go through your funnel and understand your business segment end to end. Now, this is non-negotiable. And when I'm talking about funnel, it's not necessarily just the user journey for a B2C business that you are handling. It can be for B2B business, can be B2B2C, can be anything else. What I'm urging you to understand is your specific segment end to end. There should be no compromises existing on this, because if you do not understand your end to end funnel, then you won't be able to understand where exactly do you need to focus. And on top of that, why this matters the most is that because let's say a 10% uptick on something which is bleeding the most versus a 10% uptick on something which might not even be that important just does not bring the same impact. So always start with the top of the funnel and try to find out where is your major chunk of gap remaining right now. For PMs specifically, once you have identified some candidate problems, then you need to prioritize your problems one by one. Now, two things that you need to question yourselves is that first one, if we ship this particular problem solution from the test analysis or test results, then what exactly changes? How much does the primary metric move towards the correct direction? What happens if we ship it? And the second question that you need to ask is, what is the cost to run this test? The cost means what would be your engineering time, your designing time, and how much time would you need to run this test to get significant results. Now, the block or the segment that we should be looking for is positive movement of the primary metric is higher versus where the cost is lower. Everything else either just gets pushed down the line or just gets cut from your priority list altogether. The very first problem or the story that I talked about in the starting of this video sat at the juncture of low effort versus higher ROI section, and those are the problems that we need to be focusing on all the time. Don't just test just for the sake of testing. And for the data scientists, your job is to find out where does the highest variance lie in the overall data. What do I mean by this? What I mean is that you take the primary metric in your case and break it down across all the segments possible. Can be region, can be device, can be your user cohorts, your acquisition channel, or anything else that comes to your mind that fits your business profile. Use those segments to break down your primary or secondary metrics. Now, wherever you'll see that your metric is behaving completely different across two different segments in the same layer, that's exactly where you need to target. For an example, let's say if you're seeing that your conversion rate for mobile is about 1.5%, whereas for desktop it's 6%, exactly that's where you target. On the other hand, if you see that your primary or secondary metrics are behaving exactly the same way across all segments, everywhere it's just low, it's not improving for whatever reason, then it's a more fundamental problem than something a test can fix easily. So you need to dig even deeper, you need to think about the user journey, think about the pain points that they might be facing, and it will take significantly longer time in this case compared to the first scenario that I gave. Now, one more thing that applies to both the sections, the PMs as well as the data scientists, is to understand how much to trust each of the signals and why. Now, the signals that I'll talk about is number one, behavioral data. Now, this is your source of truth. Nothing goes above it. You need to understand your session readings, your heat maps, your funnel drop off. This gives you the raw truth users are experiencing every day. Now comes the second point, the quantitative analysis. This is where the data scientists will actually look at the primary and the secondary metrics on an overall level, on a segment level, and find out where the gap actually lies. Now, the third thing is the user feedback. Now, you will find multiple users taking surveys or giving you feedback on what they find frustrating or what they wish could be different in the overall journey. These are extremely valuable. I cannot stress this enough that you should be reading your user feedbacks all the time, whenever you get time. But again, take it with a pinch of salt, because a lot of the feedbacks you will find are just negative for no reason or maybe overly positive. In both of these cases, it might not be very helpful to you. So please focus on the feedbacks which are actually constructive. One thing which is a complaint across multiple people needs more attention or more prioritization than something which is faced by maybe one user or two users. Now, the fourth thing that I'll talk about is gut feeling. Now, this is something that I might find a lot of contradictions from the audience, but hear me out. My point is, whenever you have a lot of experience, like let's say 5+ or 10+ years of experience in this domain, your gut sometimes picks up signals subconsciously when you yourself are not able to figure it out through data. Do not entirely ignore it. If you think that something does not make sense, then dig deeper. Actually find out why this does not make sense. Do not start an experiment just based on your gut feeling, because that will not hold true in most of the cases. But whenever you're seeing a result or you're analyzing something and you think subconsciously that this is not making sense, but I don't know yet why is this happening, then absolutely spend some more time to understand why this might be happening. Now, the fifth and the last thing that I'm going to talk to you about is counterfactual thinking. Now, what is this exactly? Counterfactual thinking actually tells us that what would happen if we avoid this problem altogether? If we don't solve this, what will happen? Because to be honest, not every problem needs solving. Something can be a mere seasonality, something can be happening due to campaign ending, or something can be happening due to your new users trying to understand your platform at the starting of their journey. The best combination of teams are the ones where the product managers actually bring in the qualitative context and the DS or the data scientists actually bring in the variance analysis or the user behavioral data. Now, I myself ask these three questions before running of any test. The first question that I ask is this test going to solve the particular metric that the business needs right now? The second thing that I ask is this test actually helping where the users are struggling the most in the overall journey? And the third thing that I ask is, if this test wins, then what exactly happens? How does the user experience change? How does my primary metric and the revenue changes, and exactly what happens? Now comes the part of an exercise as promised. So let's say you work for a food delivery app and you are seeing that your conversion rate could have been better. It's not performing as well as you thought it would. So for that, you are digging deeper through data, and then in a pod meeting, you guys are deciding or discussing what all test ideas can be chosen. So test A actually came from the designer of the team. His argument is that current checkout CTA design and the color is not visually prominent enough. So he wants to change the color and the design. Now, this is a relatively low effort test and the result is not known at the point, but we can gauge that it can be between low to moderate. The second test design that is on our plate is that currently the analytics team has seen almost a 35% drop off at the checkout page altogether. So we need to redesign the whole checkout page just to make sure that the users are finding it friendly enough. This is a relatively higher effort, whereas the upside or the result can be really high. A third design that came in from the data team again is that they are seeing a checkout rate or conversion rate of 1.5% in Android versus 4% in iOS. Now, out of these three, which design do you think we should go ahead with? Pause the video here, take some time to think, and then we'll come back and I will solve the problem for you. Okay, now coming to the solution of the problem. Now, according to my experience and understanding, I would go ahead with test design C. Now, if you are someone who has chosen option C with me, then you are going in the right direction. Now, if you're someone who has chosen B, you are in the correct direction, but you have to understand that this test design does not speak about a lot of things directly. The 35% number that we have with us makes sense, but then again, to redesign the whole checkout flow for every device is actually quite an high effort and time consuming compared to the ROI that we are going to get. If we are trying to look at the low effort or relatively lower effort and comparatively higher ROI, then B is actually losing to C. And if you're someone who has chosen A, then I would actually urge you to go back to the section of problem selection that I talk about in this video itself and make sure that you give it a thorough listening and only then come back to solve the exercise again. So that's it. That was all about the video today. We talked about problem selection at large, and I hope after watching this video, it will be much easier for you to understand which problems do you need to select from a pile of test ideas. Now, as this series progresses, we are going to talk about many other different things which is going to help the PMs and DS alike. So hope you like it. Let me know in the comments down below how you find the series, and we will meet you in the next one. Till then, take care. Bye.